Hello, this is Bode Oshosami, and you're welcome to another episode of Global Business Insights, where we discuss the issues behind the business headlines. China's Minister of Finance Lan Fuan today told reporters that the central government would allocate an additional 6 trillion yuan, that's about $840 billion, to local governments for tackling hidden debt issues. The program takes effect this year and will run through the end of 2026. Tokyo-based Sony quarterly profits surged 69% from a year earlier, totaling 338.5 billion yen, that's $2.2 billion. Strong profits came on the back of strong sales of its image sensors, games, music, and network services. Companies have been moving factories from China to Southeast Asia, anticipating Donald Trump would slap high tariffs on Beijing when he assumes office in the White House. Trump has threatened 60% tariffs on goods coming into the US from China, much higher than the levies of 7.5% to 25% he imposed in his first term, a major risk for the world's second largest economy. The election euphoria had another day to play yesterday as S&P 500 added 0.7% to hit its 49th record close of the year, while the Nasdaq Composite surged 1.5% to notch its 30th. The Dow Jones closed flat, holding at yesterday's all-time high. And in Europe, former ECB President Mario Draghi today warned that the sense of urgency to fix Europe's flagging economic competitiveness is greater today than before Donald Trump's election as US President. Draghi has scripted a report on how to fix the bloc's economy for the European Commission and is urging for quick action. Indeed, it was a busy week for central banks as the United States, Britain, and Sweden all cut interest rates amid a fresh element of uncertainty with Donald Trump winning the US elections. Jerome Powell also clarified that they have to wait and see policies that are actually effected, adding they do not speculate based on campaign speeches. He also said in a response to questions that the president does not have the authority to fire the Reserve Bank governor. Most major developed market central banks are in easing mode. A few may be keeping rates higher for longer, and only one outlier, that's Japan, is hiking rates. But our deep dive today is on Nigeria. The major cities, including Abuja, Lagos, and Kano, suffered blackouts yesterday as the country's electricity grid collapsed in the 10th such outage to hit the power system this year. The Transmission Company of Nigeria said in a statement, without too much elaboration, that a partial disturbance of the system caused the latest round of blackouts. Also yesterday, bids were invited for construction of up to 4,000 megawatt gas-fired power plants to cover a national grid shortfall, seeking to end years of blackouts that have hit businesses and households. According to the World Bank, 4 in 10 people in the country do not have access to electricity. Nigeria's electricity sector has always had a poor run, even from the 1960s. Successive civilian and military governments have only offered a model of apparently disjointed policies. Observers think the current template that puts generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity in 3 operational silos may need a rethink. Others say it is about market-driven pricing models and getting significantly more investment to revamp dilapidated infrastructure. Others talk of getting rid of the toxic politics and the corruption. We have 2 senior analysts weighing in on the issues. Lekan Sote, Managing Director at Publica, comments first, and then we'll replay a chat we had earlier with Toyin Abiola-Salami, expert and partner at KPMG.
In the past, when government-owned electricity supply company or corporation failed to provide electricity, the frivolous explanation swung from there's lack of water at the Kanji Dam because of the dry season, or there's too much water because of the rainy season. But they forgot to always tell us that there was the Egbe power plant in Lagos that used gas. After the World Bank advised commercialization and even privatization of the electricity sector, the explanation shifted to, well, there's not enough gas from the gas suppliers, or the generation companies are not making enough revenue to be able to pay the gas suppliers, or the distribution companies, their revenue is too low because they are charging very low tariff. Sometimes they will tell us that the national grid is too little to cope with the production capacity of the partially privatized electricity generation companies. But the truth is now getting out more clearly these days. The national grid, owned 100% by the government, has not received additional equipment or upgrades in more than 40 years. Whereas the generation and distribution companies have had significant upgrades in the last 10 to 15 years. On Thursday, 7th November 2024, the national grid collapsed yet again, but this time 2 times in one single day. The explanation came in bits. First, they said it was due to a power surge. Then they said it was triggered by repair being done to the national grid. But they never told us what exactly went wrong with the national grid that required to be fixed. It is safe to conclude that failure of governance, or indeed failure of the government, is the major problem of Nigeria's electricity sector. Thus, the weak link in the Nigerian electricity chain is the national grid that is owned 100% by the government. So one would recommend that the government should either take itself completely out of the national grid subsector, or cede a substantial shareholding to the private sector that you should drive the national grid for superior performance.
We look at the issues facing Nigeria's much challenged electricity sector with Toyin Abiola-Salami, partner, audit services, KPMG West Africa, and an expert in the electricity sector, speaking to some of the issues.
Nigeria's power sector, despite its potential, faces several significant challenges. We have an installed generation capacity of around 18,000 megawatts. However, sadly, only about 4,000 to 5,000 megawatts is reliably distributed due to frequent outages and outdated infrastructure. In comparison, South Africa, with its Eskom utility, has a generation capacity of approximately 45,000 megawatts. Despite the issues in South Africa, the infrastructure and generation are a lot more stable, which allows for better reliability and coverage. According to the World Bank, 55%, only 55% of Nigerians have access to electricity. Yet this access is often unreliable, and it affects our productivity and our daily life. By contrast, South Africa has near universal electricity access due to more consistent infrastructure investment and maintenance. So what are the challenges? Why can't we make the power sector in Nigeria work? Some of those challenges include infrastructure deficiencies. If we think about it, like I had mentioned earlier, 18,000 megawatts as our generation capacity, yet we can only produce or generate 5,000 to 4,000. Our infrastructure is outdated. It's in urgent need of modernization. And this results in frequent failures and maintenance issues. Our people, sadly, some of our people consider electricity as their God-given right and not a service they have to pay for. until we develop laws that ensure that citizens who steal electricity are accountable for it. We'll continue to see illiquidity in the sector. Another thing that we face is the dependency on natural gas. Many Nigerian power plants rely on natural gas, and we all know the stories around the vandalisms of pipelines and other operational inefficiencies. And all these create major bottlenecks in the supply chain for our power plants. There are also those financial constraints, because what has simply happened is that there's a significant gap between the cost of electricity production and the revenue that's generated. Remember, I had said some people steal electricity, so even being able to recoup the cost is quite difficult. And so the tariffs themselves cannot cover the cost of producing electricity. There are some regulatory and institutional challenges, although Nigeria has introduced reforms like the tariff adjustments. Implementing these still remain a challenge. We would need stronger governance and regulatory frameworks to make this work. So is all hope lost? No. Despite these challenges, Nigeria is making progress. Just recently, the NEC announced that Nigeria has set a new power generation record of about 5.3 megawatts. The government has also made plans to invest about $800 million to further develop the sector. There have been some international partnerships, particularly the ones with Chinese firms, to supply 1.4 million electricity meters, and there have been a number of MOUs that are focused on renewable energy. So those are some of the good things that have happened. We've also received significant support from international financial institutions. So, for example, the World Bank has restructured a $350 million loan for 7 power plants. The African Development Bank has approved $500 million for a new energy program and a $1 billion fund for sector reforms. We've also made some progress in metering and infrastructure. So Nigeria, the federal government, has allocated about 21 billion naira for prepaid meters, and USAID has mobilized about $245 billion for infrastructure and renewable projects. NERC has recently approved 8.1% tariff cut for Band A customers, and they've also unbundled the Transmission Company of Nigeria, that's the TCN. Gergu Power and Siemens Energy are currently upgrading the Gergu power plant, while BAT Nigeria has recently inaugurated a solar power plant in Ibadan. So what do we have to look forward to? There's very cautious I would say there's cautious optimism for the sector's future. Until there's enough capital, we'll continue to see a proliferation of off-grid solutions such as renewables, low-capacity gas plants that are leveraging on CNG technology. All these solutions are currently being championed by the IAN. We also hope that the mindset of our people will change such that they start to pay for electricity rather than steal it. I know some years back in India, they had experienced the same thing, and the government had to introduce very strong punitive measures for those who stole electricity. And so that has significantly reduced there. So until our government shows the will to do the same here in Nigeria, we may have a challenge there. But looking forward, we expect to see more positive things coming through from there. And in conclusion, I mean, really, while Nigeria's power sector faces significant hurdles, there are a number of recent developments and ongoing investments that give us hope. We hope that they're able to lay a strong foundation for future growth and provide more reliable and efficient power in Nigeria.
Asia-Pacific markets were mostly mixed, even as we got the highly anticipated announcement that Beijing was allocating an additional 6 trillion yuan, $840 billion, to local governments to help tackle challenges with the debt. Well, that's all we can take on this special episode of Global Business Insights. Have a great